Oftentimes, the word genocide is thrown around in international forums, and most of us think we know what defines genocide, but really we don't. The definition is much broader under international law. Article 2 of the Convention defines genocide as any of the following acts committed with intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group as such. Killing members of the group, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part, imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group, and lastly, forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. Article 3, furthermore, defines the crimes that can be punished under this convention, and that is genocide, conspiracy to commit genocide, direct and public incitement to commit genocide, attempt to commit genocide, or complicity in genocide. It goes on to talk about many things, but one thing becomes crystal clear. Anytime you deliberately inflict on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part, it constitutes genocide. Now, most of us believe genocide happens as a war crime. Well, generally that's what it's prosecuted as. Saddam Hussein was prosecuted for war crimes, by and large, but it need not be a war crime. It can be a series of human rights violations. This is largely misunderstood. Limkin, for instance, wrote after the law was first written, generally speaking, genocide does not necessarily mean the immediate destruction of a nation, except when accomplished by mass killings of all members of the nations. It is intended to signify a coordinated plan of different actions aiming at the destruction of the essential foundations of the life of national groups, with the aim of annihilating the groups themselves. The objectives of such a plan would be disintegration of the political and social institutions, of culture, of language, national feelings, religion, and the economic existence of national groups, and the destruction of personal security, liberty, health, dignity, and even lives of the individuals belonging to such groups. More often, it refers to a coordinated plan aimed at destruction of the essential foundations at the life of a national group, so that these groups wither and die like plants that have suffered a blight. The end may be accomplished by forced disintegration of political and social institutions, of the culture of the people, of their language, of their national feelings, of their religions. And that is very broad. Most listening to this would say that is extremely broad, and it can be when you start talking about a series of human rights violations. Most of us have heard this phrase in the West, race is just a social construct. Well, it isn't. It isn't. The word genocide comes from the word genotype. Genotype is interchangeable with race. For instance, the Indo-European genotype. It is very specific. It can be tested for again and again. You can't target that for extinction. If you do so, it's a hanging trial. I think it's common sense to most listeners. But what it comes down to is a series of human rights violations targeting someone for extinction. It's kind of entertaining hearing that this concept of race is a social construct, because under international law, there is no such thing as a social construct. Yeah, Saddam Hussein doesn't show up at his trial and say the Kurds were just a social construct. All Iraqis were equal. The Kurds are just a social construct, and get out of the tribunal. It doesn't really work that way. There are no social constructs under international law. If you don't believe me, go find Saddam Hussein and ask him.